You guys for tuning in to another segment of the Sit Down with Malik Wright presented by First Star Logistics. On this segment, we need to discuss the Kirk Cousins situation in Minnesota. Kirk Cousins is a loss for the remainder of the year due to an Achilles injury, and it bodes the question, two parts actually. What's next for the future of Kirk Cousins, but more importantly, what's next for the Minnesota Vikings in their future? Should they go out there and acquire a quarterback like a Ryan Tannehill, or should they tank, right? Nobody wants to tank in the National Football League. No player signs up to tank. No coach signs up to tank because there are real jobs on the line. But it is a conversation that has come up to some degree. So, Daniel, I got to ask you, what? Let's start with the Minnesota Vikings first. What do you think is next for the Minnesota Vikings? What say you?
So let me clear one thing out. The Minnesota Vikings should not tank. That's the first thing. So if you're a Vikings fan, you guys should not take. Look at the position you're in. First off, look at your head coach, Kevin O'Connell. He's not in a position to tank, right? You look at the defense coordinator just came over. You're not in a position to tank. You look at your cap space also. You've only got $9 million in cap space. So yes, everybody would love to have a star quarterback on your team, a young star quarterback. But at the end of the day, also look at where you are right now. What, 3-4 wins? You're almost at 400 or 500. So how are you going to turn that into a tanking battle where you already have the Bears, you already have the Panthers, other teams that are way worse than you off and have much harder schedules? So the Vikings should not tank. The next question, who's their future quarterback? Or let me talk Kirk Cousins. I don't think he's long for Minnesota. This is the conversation we were having. He's been there, 3, 4, 5 years. Hasn't seen a ton of playoff success. There's an obvious ceiling you can have with Kirk Cousins. This injury only pushes it back another year. I think Kirk Cousins isn't long for Minnesota. They're probably going to move off of him. I'm going to list some names. Obviously, I'm not going to steal your thunder. I'm going to list some names. If you want to go the route of having a capable quarterback with talent around him, Case Keenum, Colt McCoy, and Jacoby Brissett. Those are the three names I can think of guys you can go in immediately and bring in and can fit the system around with the Vikings. Case Keenum right now is on the Texans. He's the third-string quarterback. Jacoby Myers, I loved him with the Patriots. He's done a good job. He's with the Washington Commanders. And Colt McCoy, I believe, is a free agent. All those guys are guys where you can go out and say they're better than the backups, Nick Mullins and Jaron Hall right now.
Wait, who was the guy who's on the Patriots?
Jacoby Brissett.
Okay.
A while ago.
No, I thought you said Jacoby Myers for a second.
No.
I was like,
Jacoby Brissett. And he's the guy I would point at because he's shown that he can lead teams, not very far, but like we saw with the Browns offense last year, he led it better than what Deshaun Watson did. So those are the three names I would say if you want a capable, I'll let you go. Then I've got two others, but what say you?
Well, first I want to start with the Minnesota Vikings. You absolutely should not tank. Everything that you want is still in front of you. You guys are sitting at 500. You guys are 4-4. You guys do have a relaxing schedule. I don't say easy schedule because I feel like that's disrespectful to the remainder of teams in the National Football League. So I won't say easy. But let's talk about some of those teams that you guys face. You guys face the Atlanta Falcons. That's a winnable game. You guys face the Saints. That's a winnable game. That you guys face the Broncos. That is a winnable game, even though they're riding high off of their defeat of the Kansas City Chiefs. You guys face the Bears, winnable game. Face the Raiders, winnable game. Face the Bengals, probably a loss. Face the Lions, we'll see. Face the Packers, winnable game, and you face the Lions again. So, be honest with you, if the Vikings are able to get a quarterback in there that can manage the game efficiently, that can keep them in the game, they can win a lot of games on their schedule, thus also meaning they can win their division because the Lions aren't running away with the division like most of us expected them to. So everything that the Vikings want is in front of them. You're also about to get Justin Jefferson back. So everything that they want is in front of them. It's just a matter of, do they want to play ball or not? What message do you want to send to your organization? Do you want to say that we want to compete for championships? Because regardless, look, don't tell me that that teams don't, that teams just tank because they want to. Teams aren't into the end of things to the thick of it. Because you look at the Pittsburgh Steelers. Pittsburgh Steelers have never had a losing season under Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin has never packed it in and said, hey, we're going to tank. They've never done that. They've always remained competitive. And that's how it should be in the National Football League and professional sports, because your job is not guaranteed the next day. If you have the opportunity to continue to add to your team and continue to stack wins, that is what you should do, because that is what we're judged upon. guess what? The organization is not going to be look at Kevin O'Connell and say, well, we lost Kirk Cousins. We packed it in for the remainder of the season. That's a loser's mentality. You only have 4 losses in the season, but you only have 4 wins on the season. Everything else is in front of you. The hard part of your schedule is done and over with. The rest of these games are winnable. So forgive me for being the one to say it. I think that the Minnesota Vikings are in a position in which they can go out there and can facilitate a trade and can make things happen for them. It's just a matter of do they want to? I'm sorry, you're not winning with Jaron Hall. You're not winning with Jaron Hall. Let's start there. You're not winning with Jaron Hall, but let's talk about what you could do if you are the Minnesota Vikings to keep yourselves competitive. Why not trade for Ryan Tannehill? Here's a guy who's been there. Here's a guy who has won in the National Football League, who has led some pretty successful teams in the National Football League, who has led his team to be the first seed in the National Football League, and we've been there. You talk about a weaker division like the Vikings are in. Now was the time to grab the brass ring with the emergence of Will Levis. Ryan Tannehill makes the most sense in Minnesota for a lot of reasons. I'm a believer that's what they should do. Now, the fact of the matter is, the choice is yours, Minnesota. The choice is yours. I also like the idea that Daniel brought up about Jacoby Brissett. There are some guys that are just sitting on rosters and not being utilized. But I got another name for you. And I hope I'm not stealing your thunder. Carolina Panthers. Andy Dalton. Call up the Panthers and see what they want for Andy Dalton. It's clearly the Bryce Young show now. Let him run. Let him run supreme there. Let him have his fun there. That is what you do. That is what you do. I could think of some other teams, but you know what? Because I want to be respectful to what Daniel has to say. Danny, I got to hear what your thoughts are.
No, I'm with you. I think Ryan Tannehill is the guy. He is the best option if you are trying to still compete this season. Because I brought up some of the other names. Let me debunk one name real quick. Kyler Murray. That's a name I'm hearing a lot from right now. I think it is something, if you're a Vikings fan, you would love. But then that would involve you probably having to part ways with a guy like Justin Jefferson. But I don't think you can trade him because he's on IR. And also, I'm going to be honest, I don't think the Cardinals want to shop him. The way the Cardinals are going about their business, saying, hey, Kyler's probably going to be the franchise guy, and they're probably going to have him come back at the end of the year. So there's one other name. I know a lot of people are talking, Jameis Winston. I don't think that does a lot for you. I don't. I think that these other names, the Tannehill, the Jacoby Brissett, I think these are guys that can lead your offense. And, I mean, Jameis can do some things, but he's so up and down, and he's the guy where I'm just not confident saying, hey, like, I would much rather have Jacoby Brissett over Jameis Winston. But Jameis Winston could lead a high-flying offense. I know a lot of Vikings fans say, oh, we want that. I would strongly advise not Jameis Winston.
What if I threw a name at you? What if I said Drew Lock? Again, not
same thing as Jameis, in my opinion.
Nah. I mean, yeah, to some degree. But why not Drew Lock? Why not?
Yeah, I mean, but going about it like Drew Lock, that's like hey, then you're passing up on the Tannehill. You're passing up on truly contending, in my opinion. You're betting on the potential of Drew Lock. And that would be a huge, okay, if we're saying Drew Lock, what about a guy like Trey Lance?
What's crazy? Yeah. That's something I was thinking about. But then again, I think with him, his whole thing, I feel like, is confidence. So, like, if you're in a situation in which you're trying to get a quarterback to come in here and compete, this would be the first time where he's given full reins and be like, hey, you're the guy. All right. So how would he respond to that? Would he embrace it? Would he not embrace it? It's a weird situation, man.
Yeah.
Needless to say, very curious to hear what you guys' thoughts are. What path should the Minnesota Vikings take in order to assure that they can compete down the stretch here? So let's go down in the comment section.